Okay, so I'm going to do a series of videos here on basically food and how to regain control over our food systems and agrarianism. So everything revolved around foods. So the foods that we eat, for the most part, are faint representations of our agrarian heritage. Most of the foods in our diet, at least when we are not eating prepackaged or frozen industrial foods, are based on traditional agrarian food preservation techniques like ham, bacon, sausage, beef jerky, bologna, cheeses, yogurts, jellies, jams, sauerkrauts, pickled vegetables, condiments like ketchup, mustard, and mayonnaise, raisins, and hundreds of other foods that we eat every day. Even many like liqueurs and malted beverages were originally invented as ways to preserve the harvest and to make longer-term use of seasonal food supplies. Many regional or traditional foods are indicative of the heritage of the people who settled in that region of the country. From the wines and cheeses of places like Spain and South America, to the fermented milk products, the dried meats and breads, and the fruit of Africa and Asia. Food in lesser industrialized worlds have not changed significantly from what was eaten by kings and paupers over 100 years ago. Basically, the point that I'm trying to get to is that prior to the age of industrialism and mass transportation, different regions of the world were very much identified with their location on the earth and what could be produced and preserved from it. There's a universal truism found in 1 Timothy 6, and it says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, let us be therewith content." So if we are to be content with food and raiment, which is clothing, and if these things are derived from the bounty of the earth, we can conclude that our happiness and our contentment relies very heavily on our philosophy of the land and on our benevolent governance of it. We abuse and or neglect the land to our own spiritual and physical detriment. In abandoning our agrarian roots, man has abandoned his connection to the land, and with it has cast out his local heritage and culture. Instead, man has adopted a rootless, amorphous, and temporary international culture, defined alone by his insatiable and fruitless hunger for more personal peace, more foods, more affluence, and more comfort. Our ideas of what the ideal life should be will naturally change as we become more attuned and informed about what is truly and eternally good for us, and as our knowledge matures as to what a perfect God wills for his people and his land. The globalization and the industrialization of food, our diets and production, is as destructive as the globalization and industrialization of anything else. The world system has determined that all men and women are to be assimilated until they are all equally dependent consumers of industrially produced globalized products. I've watched a documentary not too long ago about how a major potato chip manufacturer struggled in trying to introduce potato chips into the Chinese market. It seems that the directors of the multinational snack food producer did not know that, for the most part, the Chinese people were not snackers. Because the Chinese culture, other than in a few large cities, was still basically agrarian, the people still engaged in agrarian eating practices. They did not eat 3 large meals a day, but instead ate many smaller, healthier meals, and they did not eat junk food between meals from boredom or from just cravings. The snack manufacturer soon realized that even if they were to pump shiploads of potato chips into China, They still weren't ever going to create a market there without some serious rethinking of their plans. You see, the availability of salty snack foods wasn't going to make the Chinese want to eat them. That kind of thinking only works in America, but not in China. In order for the market to change, the culture would have to change. Covetousness and greed would have to be sold in China first. China was going to need an infusion of Western-style consumerism. Massive amounts of advertising were utilized to convince the Chinese people that they needed to want the good life. The Chinese people needed to be taught to want to be like Westerners. Potato chips were portrayed not as junk food, but as a symbol of prosperity and a sign that an individual was progressive and forward-thinking. Potato chips would become an indicator of Western-style aggressiveness and ambition, and snagging a bag from a street-side vendor was portrayed as proof that prosperity and advancement had arrived. So potato chips were portrayed as progress. Potato chip and snack food factories were built in China, paying wages that would be sufficient to allow the new, upperly mobile and ambitious workers to afford the good life. Eventually, that tactic began to work, and potato chips have become one of the fastest growing food items sold in China. China being invaded by snack producers may seem like a fairly harmless alteration of the ancient culture of China, but in kind of like a butterfly effect, the overall results may prove to be more destructive than anyone may think. Introducing a westernized snack culture and the industrialized method of eating to the people of China with their numbers will likely have a dangerous rippling effect in the culture, economy, and health of the Chinese people. Not to mention that we are looking at potentially massive problems on the horizon due to China's increase in consumption of pork products. And it's us, the Americans, that are paying the price of China's new dietary demands regarding the pork products. If globalism and the potato chip revolution were successful in corrupting and sowing the seeds of destruction in a traditionally agrarian culture, it seems only logical that localism and a regional food revolution, basically reversing everything, might be successful in rebuilding an agrarian culture. So, in all things, I believe that traditional and local is usually better for you and better for your community. Traditions, practices, feasts, parties, and holidays will become more local, and hopefully we will cast off the more globalist consumer practices, and we will once again begin to be defined by our regional agrarian culture. The family will once again be connected to the land and associated with it. Man will again have legends and stories to tell of building and working the land, and he will have a sense of history that is more in line with reality and less the result of the globalist, statist, industrialist propaganda. So that's it for now. And remember, a simple life is a beautiful life.